The mind-boggling uprisings of history. Daily life. If you started yelling in the middle of the street, you'd get in trouble, right? Well, 1,000 years ago, things weren't all that different from today. In 532 AD, in Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, things were about to go completely off the rails. Back then, as an ordinary Byzantine citizen, the most fun and entertaining thing you could do was go to the Hippodrome, the city's main sports arena. There you'd watch chariot races. Men would race each other in small chariots, fiercely competing. This wasn't just a sport, it was also a matter of politics. There were only 4 teams you could support: the Reds, the Whites, the Blues, and the Greens. Then the Reds and Whites joined the other 2 sides, leaving only the Greens and Blues. That's when the real war began. The Greens represented the lower classes, craftsmen, tradespeople, workers, and the like. The Blues? They were the team of the snobs, the nobles, the aristocrats, the wealthy. So the rich supported the Blues, the poor supported the Greens. A natural enmity. The emperor usually came to watch these races too. At the time, the emperor was Justinian, a rather energetic and hyperactive emperor. He had reformed the justice system and done good work. But as happens in every state, when he started collecting more taxes than necessary, the people began to despise him intensely. A small incident had already occurred a few months earlier. After the races, there had been fighting and brawling, which wasn't actually surprising. We all know what happens after football matches here too. There's fighting and brawling just the same. Some things stay the same even as time passes. Anyway, in this fight, a few men unfortunately had their heads crushed. One from the Greens, one from the Blues. 2 men were caught. They were charged with murder and both were sentenced to death. But lucky fellows, the gallows collapsed. There was no other way to execute them, so they threw both in prison. But the people reacted to this incident and couldn't stomach it at all. Both the Blues and the Greens wanted the men freed. They shouted and hollered a great deal, but to no avail. Emperor Justinian was busy at the time making a peace treaty with the Persians. "Calm down and relax," he said. Then he said, "Let me organize a magnificent and extraordinary race for you, and your spirits will be lifted." But that was a completely idiotic thing to do. Everyone knows that telling an angry and furious person to calm down never works. In fact, when you say calm down, a person gets even more irritated than they already were. In January 532, race day arrived. This time the Greens and Blues had united against a common enemy. Since the emperor was always present at these events, both the Blues and the Greens would shout demands at him between races. Things like, do this, do that, govern the country properly, lower prices, fire this person. Today's topic was their friends inside. Both sides loudly chanted, "Free the men, free the men." But the emperor didn't care in the slightest. The crowd shouted even louder. "Nika," they roared, meaning victory, win, conquer. Normally the winning team would shout this word, but this time they were using it against the emperor. Yet despite all this, he chose to remain silent. So the crowd decided on 2 more options. Option A and Option B. The crowd burst rapidly from the stands and started running toward the palace. They broke the prison doors open with as much force as they could muster, rescued the 2 prisoners, and then burned and destroyed everything, setting it all on fire. The city plunged into total chaos for a full 7 days. Fires, destruction, nearly half the capital was reduced to rubble. Justinian conceded a little. He dismissed 3 of his leading men and so on. But he still couldn't stop the crowd. They wanted his head. The man was cornered, forced into hiding, and was crying like a child. Then his wife, Empress Theodora, appeared, calm and composed, and said, "Stop your crying." The woman told him, "Stay here, face your subjects." She said, It is better to die as an emperor than to live in exile. The man listened to his wife. In a way, he sent word to the rebels, gather at the hippodrome, let us speak calmly, and they calmly accepted the message. But it wasn't the emperor who entered the arena. A general entered, a commander entered, thousands of soldiers entered. They shut the gates. The negotiation began, one could say. With a single order, the soldiers mercilessly slaughtered 30,000 unarmed innocent citizens right then and there, and so the Nika revolt came to an end. In the end, Justinian defended the massacre as necessary to consolidate his power. He went on to reign as one of the greatest emperors of the age. All he had to do was frighten everyone into fearing to question him. The 10-cent beer night. Almost everyone knows that, besides chicken parmesan, the best combo is sports and excessive alcohol. Watching your team with friends while drinking 10 beers and having a great time. Did it ever end badly? Of course it ended badly. In 1974, the Cleveland Indians did something completely foolish. They organized 10-cent beer night. They were going to sell beer, normally 65 cents, for 10 cents. You might think, are these people crazy? On paper, there was a limit, of course. Each person could buy at most 6 beers. But there was nothing in the system about how many times per person you could do it. So you and your close friends could get pleasantly buzzed for $1 or $2. To be fair, the promotional beer was a bit light, 3.2% alcohol. But when you drink it with both hands, well, the math works differently. As if that weren't enough, the Cleveland Indians were playing a rematch against the Texas Rangers. They had lost to them last time. Thanks to the 10-cent beer promotion, more than 25,000 people showed up, twice the usual number. The game had started. The Rangers led 5-1 and had control of the score. Cleveland fans were going crazy. After a few more rounds of beer, people found their courage and confidence. Someone ran onto the field with a bat. A few others saw this, and why not, stripped right there in the open. Then Cleveland fans started throwing food scraps and beer bottles at the opposing team's players. Some in the stands had taken things so far they were setting off fireworks. The sober people said, "We're leaving," gathered themselves and left. In the 9th inning, Cleveland tied it up, but at that moment a crazed 19-year-old ran onto the field, trying to snatch a Rangers player's cap and run off with it. Not exactly a smart move. The man suddenly received a Spartan kick to the chest. He didn't know what hit him. The Rangers manager thought, they attacked my player, grabbed a bat, and came down to the field. Cleveland fans suddenly stormed the field, attacking the Rangers. Punches, rocks, bottles, chairs, bats, everything and anything flew through the air. Both teams' players tried to calm things down, fled and took shelter inside the stadium. But when they ran, the rioters ravaged the field. They stole the base bags, smashed the dugouts. 20 minutes later, the police arrived and arrested 9 people. There were no serious injuries, but the game was forfeited to the Rangers. A month later, they organized a second 10-cent beer night. 43,000 people came, but this time only 2 drinks per person, and a full 200 police officers were on the field. Not a single problem occurred. This time they had wised up and taken precautions. The Clown Riot. In 1855, Toronto was a growing and developing city. 40,000 people lived there. 152 taverns, 203 beer shops, and dozens of brothels. One day a circus came to town. Acrobats, animals, and of course their indispensables, clowns. They had 2 nights of shows. After the first night, the clowns went to a brothel to have fun and unwind. But they had gone to the right place. It happened to be the local volunteer firefighters' spot. All night, the clowns and firefighters competed for the women's attention. You have to understand, firefighters of that era were nothing like today's. They were in competition with each other. When a fire broke out, whoever got there first got paid. Because of this, fire crews would often come to blows when a fire broke out, with things happening behind the scenes. So these men knew how to fight. The clowns knew how to fight too, because they beat the firefighters, and then partied merrily and cheerfully. 2 firefighters were seriously injured at the scene and were taken to the hospital. But unlike the brothel workers, these firefighters didn't just accept this. These clowns are outsiders. Let's remind them of that and teach them a lesson, they said. The local police, firefighters, and town elites were members of a group called the Orange Order. When they heard about the fight with the clowns, they were not happy at all. The next day, dozens of Order members attacked the circus with fury and rage. They threw rocks, threw Molotov cocktails, set fires. The fire brigade came, but their purpose was different this time, not to put out fires, but to join the fight. Hours later, the mayor finally stepped in and stopped the chaos. A lot of good that did, intervening after the fact. Miraculously, no one died. The circus had burned to the ground, but the police didn't intervene. Why would they? They were part of the whole thing. 17 people were charged. Only 1 was convicted. The people of Toronto were not pleased with this at all. This is blatant corruption, they said. In their view, the town's leading men had destroyed the circus without cause. After this incident, the public changed its opinion of the Orange Order, and their political power was gone. The cheese riot. Is there anything more parasitic than scalpers? They buy cheap products and stockpile them, then create scarcity in the market and sell them at inflated prices. Your kid just wants to buy a Pokemon card, and you have to watch sweaty characters sweep the entire shelf. But scalping isn't new. In 1766, in the English town of Nottingham, merchants were trying to make money off cheese. Nottingham had become an economic hub thanks to the Industrial Revolution. New factories brought new jobs. People began migrating from farms to the city and started working in machines. When all these farms closed down and a bad harvest season hit, England went hungry that year. So as supply fell, demand rose and prices shot through the roof. At the end of every harvest season, Nottingham held a goose fair in October. People would enjoy themselves and buy food and drink for winter. Cheese was a food that lasted a long time back then. A full wheel could last a family for months, but people didn't want to pay inflated, jacked-up prices. In another town, cheese prices were half of what they were here. This place is treating us unfairly, they said. But what was known was even worse. Merchants would come and buy up all the cheese wholesale. Regular cheese sellers couldn't bring goods to the fair because middlemen were taking everything and selling it at high prices. On top of that, they were going to sell this cheese to other cities, leaving the local people out in the cold. The people were furious, attacked the merchants' shops, and broke their windows and panes. They had just one demand: sell the cheese here. The merchants said, "Get lost." The riot kicked off in earnest. Roads were blocked. Merchants were attacked. Carts were overturned and smashed to pieces. "If you won't give us the cheese at a fair price, we'll take it," they said. The rioters looted all the cheese shops, broke the windows, took the cheese, and distributed it to the public so everyone could get their share. One merchant had a boat full of cheese and tried to flee, but they boarded his boat. "You'll sell it cheaply," they told him. The man agreed, but was looted anyway, on principle. The situation grew so extreme that the British Army arrived. Can you imagine the British Army showing up for something so relatively minor? They opened fire on the crowd with weapons. Of course, not on the actual looters. The bullets found a poor innocent farmer who was just minding his own business, a man named William Eggleston. The riot lasted a few more days, and ended when the cheese left the city. Pepsi's 349 disaster. Back in the day, companies used to run lottery draws. You all know the type. Find the golden ticket, win a car, and so on. They don't do these kinds of draws anymore, and they have a good reason for that. They had wised up. Pepsi learned this the hard way in 19... They ran a contest in the Philippines called Pepsi Number Fever. Numbers from 1 to 999 were printed under bottle caps. Customers would painstakingly collect them, and the winning numbers would be announced on television. There were small prizes, but the grand prize was 1 million Philippine pesos, $40,000 in 1992, worth about $92,000 in today's money. That was 51 times the average annual salary in the Philippines, so it was incredible money. Pepsi's sales shot up by 40%. Everyone wanted to try their luck. Hope was the poor man's bread. The contest ran from February to May. More than 51,000 prizes were given out, and 17 people won the grand prize. On May 25th, another grand prize number was announced, 349. Normally, only 2 bottle caps should carry this number, but there was more to this story. Much more. Due to a production error, 800,000 bottle caps had the number 349 on them. Oh no, look at what's happened now. So Pepsi theoretically owed $32 billion in prizes, 3 times the company's total value. Thousands of Filipinos rushed to Pepsi factories. Everyone had the same winning number. Their minds were reeling. To make things even worse, the company said the next morning, "We're sorry, the correct number was 134. Pepsi executives held an emergency meeting. Let's spend the campaign's profits on this. Let's give $18 per person, they said. 500,000 people accepted. 300,000 did not. They formed the 349 Alliance and boycotted Pepsi products. In the following months, small riots broke out. Dozens of Pepsi trucks were damaged. One extremist threw a hand grenade into a warehouse. 3 workers unfortunately died. Another bomb was thrown at a Pepsi truck, killing a teacher and a 5-year-old girl. Lawsuits continued until 2000. The Supreme Court ruled in Pepsi's favor. The contest was a good idea on paper, but it ended terribly. The eel riot, pronounced palling, and a completely absurd event. A hidden gem in Amsterdam's history. Let me introduce you to palingtrekken, a peculiar Dutch pastime. It's done with your friends, a long rope, and a greased live eel. Is your imagination working, folks? Stay with me. Let me explain it this way. On summer afternoons, the Dutch would try to catch an eel hanging from a rope strung across a canal or between trees, either from boats or on horseback. Whoever caught it won the game. If you missed, you lost more than just your balance. A fun tradition spanning hundreds of years, until the government declared this is unnecessary cruelty and banned the game in the mid-19th century, never to be played again. But the people didn't much care about that. On a fateful day in July 1886, in the poor Amsterdam neighborhood of Jordan, young workers were pulling eels on the Lindengracht Canal. A few police officers caught them. Absolutely not, they said. They would not permit this. An officer sprang into action, quickly cut the rope over the canal, and ended the game. The workers were furious and enraged. The workers put an end to him. They dragged the officer into a nearby basement and gave him a thorough beating. The other police fled to find help, but that only made things worse. Cutting the rope isn't cruelty, it's oppression, the young men thought. They gathered nearly the entire neighborhood there, forming a bloodthirsty crowd. They clashed with police units for hours. When evening came, everyone said, "All right, let's go home," and went off to sleep in their beds. The next morning they woke up energetically, but still angry. They armed themselves with sticks and rocks. They came together again and attacked the police station with rocks and sticks. They beat the officers with rocks, sticks, rubbish, everything. Realizing the events weren't going to stop, the police called in the army. But even against the well-armed army, the crowd didn't back down. The army said live ammunition will calm them down. When the smoke cleared, 26 people were dead and 130 were wounded. Fortunately, the eel was unharmed.